this does not work anymore, which is, at least at first glance, too difficult for me to understand. So, as many of you may know, GothamChess often reviews my games.
Magnus Carlsen, Magnus Carlsen, Magnus Carlsen, Magnus Carlsen himself.
So today we're gonna turn it around. I am going to review a couple of GothamChess games. So we're gonna start with the game of Levy Rozman against Putnam. So we got one c4, e6, and then g3. This is something that's become quite popular recently. For instance, in the World Championship match between Ding and Gukesh, this was played by both players with the white pieces. And the idea generally is that you want to play some kind of Catalan position, but you want to avoid some of the most forcing lines where Black, for instance, gives a check with a bishop on b4, and you do that by not moving the d pawn too early. So this is all quite standard. D takes c4 has been the main move here in the past, and sort of one way to exploit that white has not moved the pawn to d4 quite yet. But recently, the move d4 has been very, very popular as well, partly influenced by the fact that it is the top engine move. dc4, queen a4, and now this is already a slightly interesting choice. Back in the day, c6 used to be the main choice here. White would take, and then b5, white would go queen c2, and Black would usually get a very decent position. It was discovered later that queen b3 is maybe a bit more dangerous. For instance, I had this against Nakamura in Moscow in 2013, and I won a decent game there. And it turned out it's not that easy for Black. So then knight bd7 was played, but an even simpler line was discovered recently, or more recently, where Black goes for this setup, trying to put the bishop on c6, and then there are several choices like queen d3 or knight takes d7, but essentially you end up in a position where it's white has the bishop pair, but Black has some extra space, and it's generally quite equal, but still playable for white. This is another popular line. Queen c2 is a bit of a subtlety, removing the queen here before Black gets to play the move pawn to b5, and now, of course, pawn to b5 with this bishop pointing in this diagonal is it's very dangerous. So then you go, let's say, knight d4, and Black's in trouble. Yeah, the best move here is c5, and generally Black is all right, but white has the more fun, I would say. Black has to play quite accurately to be all right there. b3, I don't know what to say about this move. That's kind of weak sauce, honestly. You probably want to put pawns in the center here, while Black's setup is not that harmonious. So you would imagine that after the move d4, which is the most obvious one, he was thinking about e5, but even here, let's say rook e8, rook d1, Black still has some problems with development for sure. For instance, queen e7, bishop g5, then knight d5 is a threat, and once you have to take knight d4, the white pieces are very, very active, and this could get bad for Black really quickly. So I think he missed an opportunity here where he kind of wants to continue his development, but in this case, I think you want to play a bit more concretely. So b3 happens, c5. Once again, the engine wants d4, but most humans don't really play that way. You want to continue with your plan. And yeah, now Queen E7 is illogical, but it's just a terrible move here. It really all revolves around whether Black can develop his queenside or not. If Black can develop his queenside, specifically get the bishop on this diagonal to oppose the so-called Catalan bishop that White has on G2, then White has nothing. If Black cannot do that, White will have a more or less dominating position. I actually lost a game in this line. It was not quite the same, but similar to the aforementioned Dinglerin in the playoff of the Sinkfield Cup in 2019. And well, that was a blitz game, but essentially what happened was that he opened the center early on before I could develop the queenside, and I never properly got back into the game after that. So D4, of course, this is excellent. Now Levy has the right idea. Rook B8, E4. Don't love the idea of closing the diagonal for the bishop here, but I'm sure after the top computer recommended move, which is very logical because you want to put the knight on C4, I'm sure he was thinking about the move B5, and now yeah, the top engine lines are not obvious at all. So regardless, E4 is logical. Rook D8, but now at the very least the bishop is blocked, so there is some respite. Yeah, knight f8 is quite passive. I assume he had to go for more concrete play here, but even this looks very dangerous for Black. Let's say King H1, Knight G4. Yeah, takes, and Rook AD1. It ends up being very, very concrete, and it's not at all obvious why Black should be all right here. I mean, when there are lines like Knight to A7, and then Bishop to A7, Knight C4, and then B5, allowing the queen check, because now you can block with the queen, and apparently Black is doing well. This stuff is very difficult. In this case, it's about recognizing sort of the urgency of the position. With the move Knight F8, you sort of admit that you're considerably worse, while Knight E5 is an actual attempt, maybe not only to equalize, but sometimes you can even try and play for more as Black, since the white bishop on G2 is now blocked. We continue, Bishop E5. Yeah, I don't love that move. Generally, when you have a chance to go for E5 and Knight E4 here, you should do that. Very good for White. Again, if Black had more development, we might look at it differently, but here, it's quite all right. Here, at least, he judges correctly that this exchange would not be beneficial. Black's knight can come to G6. He actually has excellent control over the dark squares on the king side, so the exposed position of his king that might look like is a problem it's not a problem at all. We go ahead. Yeah, so Rook A8, he goes Rook C1, B6, Knight C4, Bishop B7. Okay, so this is a very concrete point, actually. That this, I guess, is what he'd been playing for the whole way, the move B4. It may concretely work out quite well for White, so here it was a good idea to play the move A5 and ask White, what are you really hoping for here? Black is going to get Bishop B7, Knight G6 probably, and honestly probably a bit better if White doesn't do anything concrete. But Bishop B7 is super logical, but it allows this incredibly unpleasant move. Maybe he had missed the fact that bishop takes e4 can be met by the in-between move bishop takes f6. Now the bishop is attacked and the queen is attacked as well, so black loses material. So he goes for bishop takes b4, knight takes b6, and now this rook is clearly in a lot of trouble over here. Rook a7, queen b3. Now this is very well played by GothamChess. He spots tricks like bishop takes e4 and then knight c8 with a nice little fork. And otherwise, the move rook to c7 infiltrating on the 7th rank is really hard to prevent. Maybe the best move was knight e8, but he moves the bishop out of the attack now. If knight g6, which is logical, then you can go bishop g5, provoke f6, and then bishop e3, and once again you're pointing at this rook over here. e6 is weak as well, and basically, knight d5 attacking this rook is an unstoppable threat. So bishop c5 happens. Knight a4 is forced, but it's a very good move, but it's very logical at this point. It was hard to imagine him not finding that. Another very nice trick here, knight to d3 runs into bishop c7, and it's remarkable how useless this rook is on a7, because in most of the lines it just falls. For instance, knight c1. Now queen takes a7, of course, bishop d8, and this is still hanging. So he goes for f6, which is the best move. And now apparently this does not work anymore, which is, at least at first glance, too difficult for me to understand. Why is this? Knight, bishop c7. Rook d7, knight. Yeah, I just assumed white was winning a piece, but evidently not. And the difference here must be that f6 has created some luft for the black king, I suppose. So I think I understand. So if we compare it to the other line, like this, queen e1, wow. And bishop a5 followed by bishop b4, winning the knight. Ugh, that is very tough. Very, very tough to see. I mean, you don't expect players at this level, I mean, let alone like very, very high Grandmaster level, to find these things so easily. Even in classical chess, which I assume this game is. Okay, we go on. Knight a4 just looks kind of wrong, really. The knight is completely disconnected from the rest of the pieces, and now bishop c7. Again, the black pieces are sort of strewn across the board now, and it's hard for him to save all of them. Queen d8, rook takes c8. Nice little trick. Queen takes a5, rook takes f8 mate. So you got queen takes. And now, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with LPDO, loose pieces drop off. And this is exactly a case of that. Loose pieces on a7 and b2. And when you have an open board and a queen that can attack them, then that often leads to disaster. We also see the role of the bishop on f3 here, controlling the square on b7, making sure that the black rook or queen could not go there. And now to finish it off, he doesn't even go for the safe win of a piece, goes for the throat immediately. And now black resigned because of queen to f7. Now queen takes f8, queen takes a7, and the game is over. So overall, I would say very dynamic. Overall, a very good game by GothamChess. You'll certainly find a lot worse games than this. That's for sure. The players made a couple of misjudgments at times. I think they missed a couple of critical moments. Maybe they also rushed a bit in positions where they didn't need to. But overall, I think this was a very good win and a high quality game. His next opponent is a Grandmaster, Aleksa Strikovic from, I think, Serbia, who I used to play quite a few games against on the Internet Chess Club probably 20 plus years ago at this point. So we start with the move 1c4, which is English opening, and GothamChess goes for the move b6, which I believe is the English defense against the English opening, just for maximum confusion. I believe this move was popularized by English players in the 1970s, like Tony Miles and John Spielman. It's a way of trying to be as flexible as possible with your central pawns while developing the bishop early, and essentially you're inviting white to grab the center in a few different ways and then try and counterattack later on. So we have the moves knight c3, bishop e7, d4, e6, and e4, and this is kind of what you hope for when you're playing this as black. It's objectively quite good for white, but it leads to chaotic positions where you can counterattack. So this was the big find that the English players had in the 70s, that you can actually develop the queen very early, and it's really all about that. If black just develops normally, sort of white just has an advantage in the center. So you're using all the tools that you have in order to counterattack as quickly as possible. f3 is kind of the main move here for white, and then the main line for black is going for a quick f5 and knight h6, and now, yeah, if f e6, there's knight f5 amongst others, basically sacrificing everything and playing for quick development. Queen c2, queen h4, bishop d3, bc3, now f5. Here the main point is that it looks like black is doing everything wrong, and that white can just play knight g4, f3 and attack the queen, but actually now for queen g4, shockingly, there are just too many spots in white's camp that are being attacked at the same time, and white just cannot defend everything. So now this move, bishop takes e4, is just too soft. White has to go for fe4 and then hope that the center will hold. For instance, after the move knight f6, you keep developing and hope to chase the black pieces away with a move like f4, and after the move e5, you can castle knight g4, h4, and hope that your development advantage counts for something. If black would be able to develop his pieces here, there would just be too many weaknesses in white's position. But for now, it's a complicated fight because white is ahead in development. And for instance, if knight c6, which looks very logical, developing pieces, then the move knight rook to f5 would win material, queen to g6, and then rook to g5, and queen to e6, defending the pawn, and d5, forking and winning a piece. fe4 was certainly the critical try. After bishop takes e4, now black just has a positional advantage, really. And the opening has been a huge success for for GothamChess. Bishop takes e4, queen takes e4, knight c6. You can see that knight f6 is coming next with tempo. Black has no weaknesses in his position, and white has a very ugly weakness on c4, and very few redeeming qualities really in his position. The bishop doesn't have a lot of good prospects either, and it's just better for black already. So Levy plays excellently with queen to d3, e5, once again preventing the move knight f4, kicking the queen away, and it's just very harmonious for black. So far it's been pretty much a perfect game. bc5, queen a6. White is desperately trying to create some counterplay. There we go. But still, black has a beautiful center. The white bishop is still out of play. This knight doesn't have any forward jumps, very few prospects, and black just controls more or less everything. h6 I like as well, taking away the g5 square from the white bishop. f4, rook e8, and honestly, he's playing incredibly well here. Knight e4. Yeah, apparently queen h3 was even more to the point here. I think probably to prevent some exchanges on the f-file, but this looks very logical as well. Yeah, so white should have tried rook takes f8, followed by rook takes f1, exactly trying to exchange some pieces, but this is all quite normal. This is a tad soft, I think, and probably Levy has too much respect for his Grandmaster opponent here, trading queens and giving away, honestly, a significant part of his advantage. Again, you forced the move g3 early on, and this means that the squares around the white king are quite weak, so he should have kept the queens on the board. For instance, queen e2, you keep the queens on the board again. There are basically three possible threats here. Knight takes g3, knight takes c6, and knight takes c3, and it's very difficult for white to defend here. Next to impossible. So queen takes f1 was a case of playing a bit too concretely and cashing in early, and honestly messing up what could have been a great win against the Grandmaster. So rook takes f1. Yeah, should be noted that king takes f1 runs into to knight d3, and this would have been a beautiful way to end the game for black with this little knight dance, completely infiltrating the white position. And then rook takes c1. That's it. But we got rook takes f1, knight takes c3. So he cashes in, he's won the bishop, but now all of a sudden there aren't any threats against the white king. The white pawn on c6 has been allowed to live and is now a massive asset for the Grandmaster. All of a sudden he's doing quite all right. Rook to b1, knight to b6. So in the end, they force a repetition here, which I don't really blame either player. Apparently white could be a bit better. Black could also kind of play on with the move knight to d6, but I think at this point Levy realized he had blown his advantage. Strikovic was probably very happy to get away from a very bad position, and I don't know if he watches YouTube at all, but he probably didn't want to be in a YouTube video where Levy had won a game. So it ends up in a draw. Again, a very good game from Levy. From the games we've seen here, I've been very impressed with his level, honestly. In this game, it was really only down to one moment where he decided to exchange the queens when he shouldn't have, which is understandable, but you know, it probably cost him half a point in this game. Also, I would say very spirited defense by Strikovic from a very difficult position, honestly, from the get-go. But this is what a lot of Grandmasters do. They get into difficult positions a lot, but I learned from very early on that Grandmasters, you don't have to like knock them over once and they just fall, they get up again, they continue to fight, and you have to keep knocking them down once in the opening, once in the middle game, and once in the end game. And then they will eventually go down, but they're very resilient, and he showed that in this game. So I've been quite impressed, really. I think Levy, when he plays at his best or nearly his best, which I think we've seen in this game, definitely has the potential to improve his rating quite a bit. Whether it's going to lead to him consistently gaining Grandmaster norms, maybe not. I think that's still a bit of a level ahead, but I would say overall it's quite promising, and most of all, I've enjoyed putting the shoe on the other foot a little bit, you know, maybe we'll do more of these in the future if he continues to play good games like these.